Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Jungle Gyms podcast. Today is Tuesday, the 16th of December, and we've got myself and we've got James. James, uh, we were talking last Tuesday, and it was the first game after Wilfred Nonce had taken charge against Hearts. And although we saw flaws and we had some anxious moments, there was still a lot to hope for. However, a full week has passed, and if Celtic haven't hit rock bottom, then we're certainly on that trajectory, I think. There's a lot to talk about. We just lost to St Mirren in the League Cup final. We lost 3-1, losing 3 goals to a team for Paisley in a cup final. Scandalous. And obviously, we get scalped by Roma. We're 3-0 down at half time. And it's 3 defeats on the trot. No Celtic manager had ever lost his first 2 games in charge. Well, Nonce is certainly breaking records. That's 3 on the trot right now, and we've got Dundee United tomorrow night as well. So I guess people will be thinking, are we going studs in on Nancy? I've watched a few Celtic podcasts, and some of them are quite angry, but some of them are quite diplomatic and kind of like taking a more balanced view that we're heading in this direction anyway. So there's a lot of culprits: the players, the manager, the coaching staff, the board as well, probably the biggest architects of where we're at right now. You were at the cup final. What was your immediate thoughts heading back home after that defeat?
Dreadful. The worst yet in a pretty poor season so far. Like you say, the folk going studs in, and tonight I'm very much probably going to be one of the folk. Just everything that we kind of discussed last week, obviously prior to the Roma game as well, but just everything that we kind of feared prior to his appointment, and then after the back of the Hearts game as well. Just we're seeing it time and time again, and as we were just kind of talking before we came on there about the Roma game, like there's just absolutely no appetite for him to change it. And I know kind of modern managers these days, it's kind of like plan B is try plan A with different players. We don't really have the players to even try plan A. So what plan B is just a mishmash of go and play wherever you want, it appears to be. As we've seen with subs, which I think were 3 days or 4, however many days removed for the Roma game, and I'm still trying to get my head around the subs. And then it was pretty much the same again at the weekend there. James Forrest actually finished the game playing in a number 10 role with Luke McCowan playing wing back. And this is a manager that's claimed to have watched quite a bit of Celtic this season. And that's just in amongst a fair few other kind of what the fuck moments, just in, as I say, in the last 3 games. So I know we were kind of talking last week about the comparison to Ange Postecoglou, and I've always been of the opinion is the fact that the vast majority is hadn't heard the Wilfred Nancy or Ange Postecoglou before they come in. For me, that's where the comparison started and ended. Postecoglou, regardless of what we said at the time, it was a lot longer in the tooth, a lot more experience. He had somewhat a kind of track record across different leagues and obviously at an international level as well. And then you've got this guy that's been a manager for 4 years, albeit he's seen success in the MLS. And I'm not going to downplay the MLS because the standard is the standard is definitely better than what we see in the Scottish Premier League. But Celtic's a different beast for anything, and it just, for me, it looks like a rabbit in the headlights. And I always see it ending one way, to be honest with you, which is mad considering he's been in the job, 10 days or something?
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with you. I think that me and you're pretty much of the same opinion that Nancy is not the manager for us. We'll get into that, whether you think that we should kind of pull the trigger now or wait for longer to see how bad it can get, which will be fascinating from like a kind of vicarious point of view. The only kind of perverse thing is that it's your own club you're kind of watching and almost free fall. And I was thinking, like, can things get any worse? And they certainly can, because at the moment you can clearly argue that the league is salvageable. The domestic campaign is salvageable if you make the right decisions. So I guess we'll get to that. So look, thank you to everybody so far in the comments. We've got Plunge, we've got Gaddafi's 566, we've got Heavy Vibes, we've got the Baldy Chucker. I hope you're doing. By the way, Baldy Chucker, good luck with your new podcast. James, the game itself. Where do you start? Right. Okay. So the lineup. A lot of people were thinking there was talk like an hour or two beforehand. I don't know if it was because of the lineup that was announced, but a lot of people were saying, "Oh, right, he's going back to a back four in defence. He's making the tweak. He's taking on the feedback. He's making the tweak." And because we're not, because there was other things in the media coming out to saying that the board, sorry, not the board, the management, coaching staff, and the players had a chat and they'd agreed that it was too much too soon. So before the kickoff, a lot of people are saying we've gone back to back four. The guy's smart, but no, it was the same old. It was the same old. Do you think that it was a kamikaze thing to continue with that, or were you convinced at one point that we had gone back to a back four?
Oh, when I seen the team lineup, I just assumed it was a 4-3-3 because we'd probably played that team under Martin O'Neill, if no Brendan Rodgers earlier in the season. And when you see it, it's 4-3-3. And I was at the game with my cousin, and he came in. He was in a wee bit later than me, but he's like, "I'll be 3-4-3. He'll play Maida in the 10 and play Ralston at centre half." And I'm like, "Nah, it's like he's daft, but he can't be that daft." And then even in the warm up, obviously, as I was kind of saying to you, we were in a folded teams on Sunday. But even in the warm up, they warmed up as a back four. It was the 4 defenders that were there, and then obviously when they come out and they take kick off and you see them lining up, and I'm looking, I'm going, he's playing Ralston centre half, and then obviously it becomes apparent for there that Maida is playing in the 10, which is madness. It's just crazy. And as I was saying to you just before we come on there, similar to the Roma game, look, if you come in and you're tied to this 3-4-3 and you think you can get it to work, look, fair enough. If he changes it for the Hearts game, we started well for the first 20 minutes. Brilliant. I look at that as it took Derek McInnes 20 minutes to suss us out, and then they kind of took over the game. But like, if you think you can get it to work, fine. But more specifically, as I was saying to you, the Roma game on Thursday night, Roma didn't really break sweat, and they were 3-0 up at half time against us, and we could not get near them. And then, as I was saying, I'm at half time, I'm like, right, he's got to bring Ralston O'Donovan on. He's got to get back to a back four. The players know that system. Roma are a good team. We can get beat regardless, but there's a manner in which to get beat, and this isn't it. 15 minutes into the second half, we had Ralston playing centre back and Kobe Donovan playing his wing back, and that was kind of like, this isn't going to work. This guy is just tied to this system, and he's got no way of changing it. And I've seen folks saying that he can't play 4-3-3 because he doesn't believe in it and he can't coach it. And I'm talking about pushing wingers further up the park and taking a centre half out the team. We're not talking about Santa Claus. It's not that he doesn't believe in it. It's there to be played. I was going to say we have the players for it. We don't really have a right winger, but we certainly don't have the players to play whatever this is. I mean, Liam Scales has probably been our best winger and our best number 10 in the last kind of week. But it's just a shame that he's playing centre half, where he's actually been pretty poor when he's been asked to play that position. So, as I say, when I seen the team lineup, I just assumed it was 4-3-3. Like you say, after Backy's comments about being too much too soon, like, right, fair enough. He's realised if he did come out and go 4-3-3 and we get beat, I'd be able to defend him a wee bit more. I know there'll be folks saying that he's no sticking to his principles and all the rest of it, but I would look at it and say, no, but he tried the 3-4-3. We were miles off it. He's went back to what the players know. So maybe the blame would go on the players. Like, the players aren't good enough regardless, but maybe the blame would go on the players as opposed to the manager. The manager had kind of done his bit in the sense that he changed it, but no, he didn't. And then I know folk were clinging on to the 20 minutes against Hearts and then clinging on for dear life to the second half against Roma where we were dead and buried. I don't think there was anything in that St Mirren game in the cup final to say, well, there was something there. There was a positive. You're conceding a goal after 2 minutes and can't defend, can barely attack. You've got two number 10s that don't touch the ball. Your centre half seemingly the ball in the net. There's just flaws all through the team, and I just feel it's glaringly obvious. It was never suited to us, and so it's turned out. I hope to God that I'm wrong. I hope we get the more and get a result and we kick on, but I honestly just only see it ending one way, even after a week.
Aye. I think from what I heard of some people going into the game, in terms of like going back to a four at the back, I heard some people say that he's fucked if he does and fucked if he doesn't. In terms of, well, continuing on with the 3-4-3, then we don't have the players for it, and we're going to get a hiding, if not that game, then the next game. And if you go back to a four at the back, well, then he's given in to his doubters. He's given them the upper hand. This is what I've heard people say. But at the same time, we're still going to lose because we're such a crap team. I just think that that's a kind of a defeatist attitude. And I would go back to the back four because that's what the players know. They've been doing that for, well, like the last time we had like a three at the back, or if you want to call it a five in the back, was Neil Lennon at one point when he changed it mid-season. And he actually changed it, right after the winter break, I think. So he probably did that change, a big change at the right time. But we've been playing easily 4 seasons now, 4-3-3. So to change this mid-season, it's just like a team that we're already in a bit of a confidence crisis. It's just creating more. It's like you're pressing panic buttons when you're already in that time of crisis. So we've made a bad situation even worse. I was looking at the lineup there just to kind of refresh my memory. And whenever you've got Maida, who I would like to see him play along with Iheanacho, but Maida has to, at that point, go to a left forward position. But he was playing as kind of one of the central withdrawn attackers. And whenever you've got him involved in the build-up, try to play in the centre of the park, when he's not the last man running onto the ball, then it doesn't suit his game and things probably fall apart. His awareness with his back to a defender isn't great. He's normally best focused on one thing, and that's latched onto that final ball with the keeper in his radar. Overall, just a terrible game. One thing I heard going into afterwards, during the celebrations, I heard from the St Mirren camp that before kick-off, when they were in the dressing room, you've heard Ange do this as well before. I think Ange did it with the Australia team at the World Cup. But Stephen Robinson played a video for the players, and it was like a kind of a compilation of like their family, their partners, and things like that. Wish them the best of luck and saying what they mean to them and stuff like that. And you can just imagine how that would galvanise those players, because that would have been the biggest day probably of most of their careers. And the last time I think they won it might have been under John McGinn. Is that right?
Danny Lennon was the manager, wasn't he?
Aye, so that's easily 10 years ago, I'd imagine. But this is going to be the biggest game for those players' lives, their careers, and that kind of motivation. You understand that they're going to give every single ounce of sweat and leave it all in the park. I just wonder what the atmosphere would have been like whenever Nancy was talking to the players before they went out. What do you imagine the atmosphere would have been like in the dressing room? Perhaps it would have been Callum McGregor trying to G everybody up, which he normally does. I don't know how the passion transmits from Nancy to the players, because I think he's a very hard listen.
No, absolutely. If it was anything like his press conferences, his team talk probably started on Friday afternoon before the game. But look, that stuff, I get that obviously it'll motivate the St Mirren players and all that, but you hear it often enough when folks say, when MD comes to Parkhead or when MD plays Celtic or Rangers, it's their cup final. This was literally the cup final, and obviously it's going to have that wee bit more on it, but it should also have that wee bit more on it for us. We are the serial winners in Scotland, and well, literally for the first minute, we just didn't look interested and didn't look as if we knew we didn't know what we were doing. That much became apparent as the game wore on. I know we'll go into discuss it in a bit more detail, but the Kieran Tierney thing, and then Luke McCowan's coming on, literally ran on the park and then getting back to ask the manager, where am I playing? Am I playing as a 10 or am I playing as a wing back? And it's like, things like that. And you're like, this is amateur stuff. This is, if you've got a player coming on the park that you've just decided to bring on and he doesn't know where he's playing, what does that say about the rest of the setup? You've literally just spoke to him. So, there's just nothing to cling to as a positive. Listening to the guy, as I say, at his press conference today, he doesn't really inspire you. Don't get me wrong, he did seem a wee bit bullish today, and somewhat confident. So we'll see how that plays out the more night. But he's not a great listen. I understand that English is his second language, and look, fair play to him, his English is better than my French and all the rest of it. But it doesn't inspire much confidence. And then on top of that, obviously we've heard about the kind of WhatsApp rumour stuff about the falling out with the players and meeting with McGregor and stuff. So time will tell on that front. That is just rumours. But even Liam Scales after the game, when he was asked about the kind of formation and the style and standing by it, he didn't seem arsed in the slightest. And I'm like, and I hate harking back and comparing to like Postecoglou, but even Brendan Rodgers, can you imagine a player coming out and saying, just been like so unarsed about this guy that's just come in the door and was meant to be such a coup for us, and the wee guy on Sky, whoever it was telling us he was going to win the Champions League in the next 10 years and all the rest of it. It just doesn't seem to have anything about him, and the players don't seem to be buying what he's selling in the slightest.
In his press conference, he's hinting that he's getting better. He said, look, don't forget I'm from Europe, so I know the way it works, and to be fair, in the MLS, it's the same, just not with the same intensity. The fans, the media, you don't have results. This is normal. You might think I'm crazy, but I'm embracing this adversity because I know I'm getting better. And he also said, I don't have anything to prove to anyone, simple as that. I just have to be coherent with my team and to do the job as best as I can. And after that, it will be more positive. There's nothing that he says, let's see, from day zero, whenever he first came in, the interviews that he was given, I said it to my mates that he's a hard listener anyway. It's not his fault that he's foreign. It's not his fault that he's got a really thick French accent. It's nothing like that. Like, he's got the same fucking accent as Arsene Wenger. But just the words that he uses, there's nothing at all that I can relate to. There's nothing like, no way at all. I feel that he's actually addressed the fans. From
sorry to jump in and tap you there, but see just on that, no addressing the fans, I don't think we can blame him for that, because Wilfred Nancy technically hasn't actually been unveiled as a Celtic manager. He get chucked in front of a camera for a pre-match press conference. So look, you think like Rodgers sitting next to Michael Nicholson and Peter Lawwell when he was unveiled, it was the same for Postecoglou. Obviously, it was Don Mackay at that time, but he never had that. And whether that was a timing issue because obviously it's during the season, or whether it was just he didn't want it, because it's not even kind of Captain Hindsight kicking in, but I think we all said it at the time. What was Celtic thinking? See, when he just kind of wandered into Lennoxtown and he was wondering about the gym and he spoke to James Forrest and then he spoke to a few of the B team players, why did we feel the need to put that on social media? It didn't make MD look better. The B team players I can kind of get because there was an actual conversation and a kind of interaction there. But the James Forrest one, you've picked the most shy, awkward, quietest guy in the team to meet this, basically a stranger at that point. And the full thing just felt really awkward.
It's not the way to treat a legend.
Aye. But it's not a great first impression for the new manager, which is totally no his fault. I mean, we're doing that before he's actually had a chance to introduce himself to the team.
There's a good one. Is Nancy the first Celtic manager not to be paraded outside Celtic Park?
Aye, it must be. It must be. And I get that, as I say, it's kind of like different in the sense that he's come in mid-season. I can't remember, to be honest, if we had a press conference when Lennon came in off the back of Mowbray. But I'm saying that we had a press conference with Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney, and they've come in kind of obviously mid-season as well, so you don't even need to get as far back as Lennon. But the full thing has just been a wee bit bizarre. The stuff on the park has been totally bizarre, but the off-field stuff in terms of like, the announcement and everything since has been a wee bit strange.
Yeah. Look, the game itself. Can I get your honest thoughts? See, whenever up until that point where Ian Atchell was playing, I think as soon as he went off, I'm like, it's not going to happen for us today. I don't mean to be kind of Nostradamus, but maybe that's kind of hindsight talking there. But Ian Atchell, he might not be the fittest guy around, but his first touch is very good. And if you give him a chance, he's got a good opportunity of getting it, of hitting the target at least. I just felt that anything good from Celtic would have came through him, but the moment when he went off, it just went back to the kind of the old hard luck stories that we've had so far this season, with the hamstring injuries in particular. It looked as if like, our chances depleted a lot whenever he went off, and we had to reshuffle. And Johnny Kenny came on. Johnny Kenny, I don't know if he had a kick of the ball. I can barely imagine any instances. And whenever he's up against that back three, back five of St Mirren, it's a no contest. Part of me was like, from like a kind of distance point of view, I was almost kind of happy for St Mirren that they get their day in the sunshine. Like Marcus Fraser, who was a Celtic player, he started out from the Celtic Academy. I think he might have played for Celtic in a European game once upon a time. Obviously, he got the opening goal, and that was from a corner. So that's 3 games in a row we've conceded from a corner. We've never been strong at set pieces, but where are we going? But Rio Hatate was marking him, and Scales was about 5 yards back.
Aye, but see, just on the Hatate thing, right? I don't know if anybody else would have noticed that. I've not watched the game back at all. I skimmed through the highlights to see the goals. But see, for that first goal for the corner, Marcus Fraser was unmarked. The St Mirren players were kind of like standing in a huddle at the edge of the box waiting to come in. Rio Hatate is standing front post pretty much until the guy steps up to take the corner. And he turns around and he realises that we've got 2 up against 3 or 3 up against 4, whatever it was. And Rio Hatate actually runs onto Marcus Fraser. So Rio Hatate is in a sense kind of like taking the initiative, and in doing so he's made himself look bad because obviously he gets beat for the header. But even on the YouTube highlights, I tried to see it back. If you literally pause it just as the frame changes to the goal for the corner, you'll see Hatate's actually running away for the front post onto the Marcus Fraser. So as much as he gets beat for the header, I don't put the blame on Hatate for that. It's just poor organisation, which again comes for the manager. You're playing 3 centre-halves, so why is one of their centre-halves up against their midfielder who's not exactly notorious for his aerial prowess? So that was a shambles, and as you say, we were never great for set pieces kind of historically, but fucking it looks as if it's going to get a whole lot worse under Nancy.
Yeah, and of course we're playing Dundee United tomorrow night. As Smell the Glove pointed out, the Celtic goal, it was a very nice tidy finish for Rio Hatate. It was a cross in for Kieran Tierney, I think it was, and Hatate slides in kind of the right hand side of the box. And he puts it beyond the keeper. Great finish. And by the way, that keeper had a very good afternoon. I think there was he had a really good save for Ian Atchell, who headed it. He was very close to goal, and he dived for that. It was a genuine good save. And there was a few other ones that he managed to kind of tip round the corner over the bar and things like that. For the Celtic St Mirren goal, I know it was Ayunga who scored. I think my mind has blocked it for my memory. I don't know if that was a particular painful one. but that was on the 64th minute. Do you recall how that one went?
Aye, it was Gogic with a wee kind of outside of the boot clip through, and then Schmeichel was in no man's land, and
Oh yeah,
headers it
yeah.
past him. Aye, I don't know if you maybe put a wee bit of blame on Schmeichel for that. Kind of no
Thing
man's
is,
land star fishing, but he can't really no come for it
what,
either.
exactly, if he stays on his line and then the guy just like controls it and passes it past him, you'd be like, rush out, why didn't you do that? So
Aye.
I think it's a bit of both. I know that it's very, very easy to give Schmeichel flack these days. I understand that. But for that one, I think he's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I agree with you. And obviously the final goal, the counter attack, and I think that's what happens whenever you're playing with a back three. And I think it was Donovan who was kind of caught out, but obviously he's kind of brought in to kind of try and add to the attack. And the ball's played over him, and then he chops whenever he gets closed down by two defenders because Trust at that point had moved over. He chops, he plays in Ayunga, and Ayunga's get time to control and to hit it by Schmeichel. And that was with 14 minutes still remaining plus stoppage time. But you saw that the way that Stephen Robinson was celebrating in the park, it just looked like we were dead on our feet. You looked at the players, the reactions, and it's mental. Callum McGregor was Mr. Invincible in cup finals, and now it's 2 on the trot. What a reversal of fortunes, man. Whenever I watched that, I was kind of thinking that's Inverness Cali Thistle. That's his moment. Obviously, he's not been sacked on the back of it. He's going to be given more opportunity, more kind of rope to hang himself with. But I just thought that was his Cali Thistle moment.
I don't think they'll sack him. Because if they sack him, to be honest, if they sack him anytime soon, they'll be admitting a mistake. And if there's one thing our board won't do, it's admit to mistakes. I said last week, I said if I had my tinfoil hat on, I says I think he'll limp on to probably February, and then it'll be him and Tisdale will get the bullet, and that'll be to try and take some of the flack away for the board. They'll try to be seen as kind of doing something about it in the sense of ousting Tisdale along with him. But as I said last week as well, Tisdale didn't just come in this summer. Tisdale's already been here last year as well under Rodgers. And it's this guy that we're trusting to get it right in the January transfer window as well. I've seen a lot of folks saying that he needs to get to January to get his own players in, and I think you're putting a hell of a lot of trust and faith in our board. Who was the last good player that Celtic signed? Like, genuinely good player. You're probably going as far back as Alistair Johnson. I don't know if you can't really include.
That was the second year of Ange.
Would have been winning it because it was a World Cup. Mind he was playing at the World Cup when he signed.
Aye, because we had a full year with Josip Juranovic, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then he went away, and Tell Johnson came in to replace him, didn't he? But you think back, like Jota, hopefully will prove to be, but I don't think you can say that yet. You're basing it off his first spell. Nicholas Kuhn, possibly, but I would argue that Kuhn gave us a good 6 months. Kieran Tierney on a free, I wouldn't say so just yet. Hopefully, again, we prove to be wrong. But in terms of a good signing that's come in, you're gone quite a bit back to actually stick with. Oh God, no, still get nightmares. No, you're going quite a bit back to find one. So you're putting a hell of a lot of faith in these people to get it right in January, and there's almost kind of seemingly like a notion that they're going to be lined up to come in on the 1st of January. We're going to have like 10 players coming through those right away, and it's just not how Celtic operate. So that's why I think we'll sign a few in January, let them limp on probably until February, and at that point, that's when him and Tisdale will go. But you've got to remember as well, it's not just him that will be gone. He's brought all his staff in with him as well, and it was that a 2.5 year deal. So as much as it's not the longest contract, it will mount up when you get through the staff as well.
I want to pick up on 2 points here. So we've got one for the Baldy Chucker about the goalkeeper right now. So he thinks that Casper needs to be dropped. I want to get your thoughts on that. Another one that I don't want to forget about is for John Francis here. He's intentionally playing players out of position to see how to handle the build-up play, receiving the ball, tight spaces, and understand rotations and positional plays. And I guess that ties into one of his opening comments whenever he was unveiled as manager. He expects players to be able to play more than one position. So I guess we'll get to that, more than one position, and we'll go back to the goalkeeper. Whenever I hear a manager say that, well, I've only ever heard him say that, my immediate thoughts was on utility players and how utility players, people love them, but they're also the first casualty whenever a proper player comes in for that particular position. So, for example, try to think, I was thinking maybe Charlie Mulgrew, but Charlie Mulgrew had a great set piece delivery. So he could play at centre back, he could play at left back, he could also play at left wing back. He was, and I think he might have also played in centre midfield at one point, Charlie Mulgrew. The one thing about Charlie Mulgrew is that he had height and he had a very good left foot. So this might be an example that I'm volunteering here, which defeats the point I'm trying to make. But he had a particular attribute that no matter where he played, he'd always be able to offer something because of his set piece delivery and his height. But there are certain individuals in the past, maybe 20 years, that we can probably think of, maybe none spring to mind right now. As you can tell, this is not a premeditated point of mine. But sometimes a utility player, Jackie McNamara, obviously was a right back, but he could use the right wing back. He could play in centre midfield. Whenever Mark O'Neill came in, he didn't play Jackie McNamara. He had a different vision. I guess what the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes when you've got players who can play in a number of positions, you might say a jack of all trades, they lose out whenever you bring in a player who's specialised for that position. And I'm trying to think of players who, Jota for me is a player who has pretty much only one position that I'm aware of, and he's an out-and-out winger. Admittedly, he's not blessed with pace, but he's got a very good skill set where he can beat men and he can be that magic man. I don't think he would flourish in a number 10. I don't think he'd flourish as a false number 9. I don't know where in the park he would be able to kind of unveil his party tricks unless he's playing on the wing, primarily left wing, not right wing. But as a wing back, I think he would stagnate. I think that would just be like another run of bad luck for Jota. I don't like that comment about I want players who are able to play in more than one position. Like Kyogo, a prime Kyogo, would you want him playing in other positions apart from the last man to finish off a Postecoglou attack? I'm waffling a fair bit here, but what do you think?
I think you're right. I think in an ideal world, you would have that, but it's just no based in any reality. I mean, they're the two years between the best part of 25 years. We've come up with Jackie McNamara, Charlie Mulgrew, and Chris Sutton. That's three players, the guts of kind of 25 years. So that just doesn't bear in reality. I mean, you can play players out of position, like we've seen. Doesn't mean they're going to be good at it. They can be really, really bad at it. But if you play him at centre back for 10 games, it doesn't make him a centre back. If you play him as a number 10 for 10 games, it's not going to make him a number 10. And I just keep going back to the fact that he said he watched Celtic quite a bit. And I'm like, well, right, that's good. You'd like to think that. But if you watch Celtic quite a bit, you would know that Tony Ralston can't play as a centre back. You would know that Tanecki can barely play as a winger currently, and he can't defend, has been evidenced. Yang, I'll give Yang benefit of the doubt because I actually think he's probably been one of the better performers under Nancy since he's come in. I think he's actually done no too bad in that role. But like, the Liam Scales thing is mad to me. Like, when you think of Liam Scales the last week, apart from the one where he got absolutely bullied twice after that in Lunderloo at the halfway line, I think Liam Scales playing in almost a kind of left wing number 10 role at the edge of the box, which is mental. You've got three centre halves in Trusty, Scales, Ralston. We could throw Tierney in there as well. None of them are ball carrying players. If you leave any of them on the ball,
Yeah,
they'll make
yeah.
the mistake for you. And I think they obviously referenced it after the game. They done it with Trusty, but you seen it with Ralston. The clip obviously that you sent with his Peter Kay moment, he's fucking Avits just launching it into the car park. But these guys, and that isn't their fault. They're obviously seasoned pros. They're no kind of wet behind the ears football players, but that isn't their strength. So why are we forcing them, or at least one of them, to be that guy to play that role? It's not going to work. And the same goes for, as I say, the wing backs. Taneke is poor. Taneke shouldn't be in that team currently, but we're asking him to play wing back. Yang, as I say, will give a pass to. Luke McKeown was playing right wing as a kind of needs must. We've tried everything else under Martin O'Neill, and he was just kind of cutting inside anyway and almost playing that kind of number 10 role, albeit on the kind of the lineup he would show as a winger. But you're throwing him in now to be a wing back. You're throwing him in to be a number 10. You're playing a box in midfield. You've got Nygren, who's never a winger, but he looks totally lost after the back of that Roma game. He was probably the worst player in the park in the time that he was on. There's just so many kind of players that don't fit. And I go back to it again, and there just isn't any kind of forward planning. Look, as I says, and regardless of how good, bad, or indifferent the players are, we spent £10 million on wingers in the summer. We signed Jota, obviously no long prior to that. He picked up an injury. That's three wingers and the guts of £20 million that was spent on them that don't fit in this team. And we can say that maybe Jota will be good as a number 10, maybe he'll be able to play up front as a striker, maybe he can play the wing back role. But if we're being honest, I don't think he's going to be able to. When you think of Jota, you think him getting to the byline, putting in cutbacks for Kyogo or whoever it was. You don't think he's defensive side of the game. Ironically enough, the one player that you probably would put in that bracket is Dyson Maeda. And after Maeda, I think he's the only one that actually hasn't played that fullback position. He's played
Yeah,
everywhere else, but
yeah,
so that's why I just don't see it working. And like I say, see when we played the 4-3-3 and you went through pretty much everybody playing right wing. But the reason for that is because we didn't have a right winger. Because of the poor recruitment in the summer, we didn't have a right winger to play. So we had to play somebody at right wing. We were playing Maeda at right wing and it didn't work. And then we kind of stumbled on Luke McKeown, as I say, under O'Neill. And I wouldn't say it was brilliant, but it was passable. And you at that point, you obviously you needed a right winger. We needed a striker. And while Johnson's injured, you probably need another right back. That was your kind of bare minimum under Martin O'Neill playing a 4-3-3. Then you bring this guy in and he goes to 3-4-3, and you're looking at it going, well, we need a striker. We're going to need two wing backs. We're going to need a right sided centre back. We're going to need an out and out number 10. And we're going to need an out and out kind of holding midfielder, because that third goal is going to be a blueprint for how to score against Celtic. St Mirren could have scored that goal 10 times on Sunday if the ball broke to them when we were on the attack. And you're sitting and it's like we can see that. So how can the manager not see the blindingly obvious? And look, I know that Martin O'Neill had an easier run of fixtures, but he still won them. It obviously lost to Michelin to a flying high in the Europa. Feyenoord Dundee playing great now, but historically it doesn't matter who Celtic play away
yeah.
from him in Europe will get hammered. He went there and we played brilliant. One of the best performances, if not the best performance of the season. And you're like, right, bit by bit, we're building this back up here, and you're starting to get a wee bit of confidence back. You're closing Hearts down, and then within a week, it's just all been ripped up and set on fire again. And then we're back to talking about getting into January needing 6, 7, 8 players to come into the first team. And it's just been, like, Nancy obviously will carry the can for it as the manager, but absolutely everything about it has just been horrendous. As we were saying last week, like, for the first time that it became apparent that he was going to be the kind of the front runner and it looked as if he was getting the job, a Google search told me all I needed to know about him, that it wasn't going to work here. to go back to what we were saying about the wing backs, like the wing backs very rarely, and he was saying in his press conference today that he defends with a 4. And you're like, but I'm watching it. You can't lie to me. I'm watching it. You don't defend with a 4. If anything, you defend fucking pretty much 2-on-2 when the ball's been turned over after we're on the attack. But you're setting up with a back 3 and 2 wing backs. So don't lie to us. But then it's when you think of the wing backs, Taneke, Yang, fucking Schmeichel, probably the Mora, whoever it is, they very, very rarely get further than kind of 3/4 of the way up the park. And every time we attack, kind of 90% of the time, it's probably why Iheanacho was so effective. We're passing it to him with his back to goal. The number 10s are just kind of pointless being there because they don't seem to get a kick. It always seems to be the kind of wing back or the centre half will carry it up, and then we'll pass it inside to somebody with our back to goal, and we'll try and bounce it out to somebody else. That seems to be the whole thing. And we just don't have the players to play it. It doesn't matter who we play up front. If that is how you're going to play, honest to God, you're as well sticking a centre back up front, because the whole point of them being there is to be a link guy, to bring it in on the chest and play somebody else in. And it dies in Maida, as we've seen on Thursday. And don't get me wrong, I think he took a lot undue flack on Thursday because some of the passes that were played into him was like schoolboy stuff. He had a centre half right up his arse and nobody to pass to run about him, and you're expecting him to do something with it. So there's just so many issues, mate. I don't even know what the question was. I've done that thing I was saying that Nancy does and just waffles nonsense, but there is just so many issues.
You did. You're a wee bit guilty of that, but not a lot of good comments, even though it was, kind of a broad statements you're making about different issues. Do you want to talk about Casper, because we kind of moved away from that, but there's a couple of guys talking about Casper. The other thing is, see with the wing backs, is that normally if you're a winger, you want to receive the ball where you're able to turn around and isolate the fullback, and it's just you and him. But whenever our wing backs are getting the ball and they're getting up to the forward, the final third area of the pitch, at that point the opposition have had plenty of time to then get 2 up against 1. Their wide midfielder and their fullback up against our wing back. So you've seen it with Taneke in the past 3 games. In the past 3 games, whenever Taneke has ventured into the final third, he's up against 2 players, and at that point, he doesn't have much pace, but he might try, but most of the time he's going back inside just to play the ball back into the Stramash and the centre of the midfield. And it happens again on the other side as well. We Luke McCowan or Yang and playing it back into the centre. Another thing is that even before they get to that stage, they're picking the ball up from a deeper position. So by the time that they've run up there, you're expecting that they're still going to have that energy to accelerate past 1, maybe 2 players. It's just... It's not going to work. But James, before we kind of move on to anything else, the goalkeeper situation. So people obviously still remember the cup final where we were, labouring to victory. Labouring is probably the word. Labouring to victory against Aberdeen. And then Schmeichel had that brain fart when he pushed the ball into his own net. He's not been that impressive this season. And obviously in the past 3 games, it's get even worse whenever you're playing in a poor team. So I guess his distribution has been quite poor at times. He's obviously, Postecoglou would have loved him for his philosophy about kicking it out from the back. And Postecoglou would have loved that in terms of his eagerness. But a lot of times he's looking up and he's doing that side foot volley, which winds up a lot of people, I think. It looks great, like a pebble skimming off the surface, It looks great whenever it works, but whenever it goes out of play, it looks terrible. And obviously the moans go back to him. So whenever things are down, it's very easy to complain against Casper. Has has his shot stopping, which is probably the best thing that he's got going for him, is shot stopping. Has that failed him in recent weeks? Somebody mentioned the goal he conceded against Braga, whenever he get caught out from about 35 yards, top corner. Is Casper becoming a liability, such as Jack Butland was when Barry Ferguson made that brave decision to drop him? Because regardless of his reputation, he did drop him. Sorry to give any credit to Barry Ferguson there, but I don't know. Like Casper hasn't been great. Okay, he's not settling things down whenever you're playing in a team that needs settled down. But is he playing at Jack Butland levels when he needs to be dropped? Do we know enough about Sinisalo? Do we know enough about Sinisalo that he's like cool as a cucumber, that he's going to be much better than Casper, or is it just the default where make the change and see what happens? Are we at that stage, or is it that bad?
It's kind of difficult to say because his form has definitely dipped, but I think some of the goals. I mean, I had question marks about the header for the Hearts goal, the second goal last week. But I'm kind of 50-50 on that because I think he could move his feet a bit quicker, but at the same time, it's an excellent header. Letting take it away from it, is a great header. Not obviously, it's relatively far out as well. And then, as I say, that kind of the second goal at the weekend there as well. As you say, he's damned if he did, damned if he didn't. But it is more on the distribution, and that was most noticeable for me, at least, against Roma, particularly in the first half. He just kept getting them it back. It was either kicking out at the park or high balls to wee men, and then he was moaning that Maida wasn't out jumping the 6'5" centre half and stuff. And then, as you say, the wee kind of skimmed passes, and that's all well and good. See if you're clipping that out to a fullback that's in 20 yards of space and can take 2 touches to control it, get out of his feet and play a pass, brilliant. But see when you're doing it into a crowded area in the middle of the park, and in this kind of formation, the middle of the park is crowded, you're just going to, at best, end up in a 50-50, but more often than not, it'll be a loose touch and getting it away. I don't think he will change it because I think Schmeichel is probably quite influential in the dressing room. He seems to be, well, obviously is one of the senior players, but especially under Martin O'Neill, I noticed that he was quite kind of front and centre a lot of the time. And O'Neill's last game, it was kind of Schmeichel that made O'Neill go for his wee kind of lap of honour. Obviously, that's kind of no Martin O'Neill seen today, things like that, but Schmeichel was the one that kind of pushed them to do it. So I don't know if dropping him would maybe have impacts on maybe an already kind of fractured dressing room potentially. No fractured in the sense against each other, but obviously just no buying into the manager. So I don't know if dropping him will make that worse. So I don't think he will drop him. And to be honest, I really don't know if I would, because I think his form has dropped, but I don't think he's been horrendously bad in the sense that he's like costing his goals and stuff. And Sinisalo's UCA is relatively unknown, but to be fair to him, from what we've seen him,
McGinty loves him.
Aye, well, McGinty must go and watch the reserve games or something, the bounce games in Lennoxtown. But for what we've seen him, to be fair, he hasn't really set a fit rank. I think there was one last year, I can't remember who it was against, but it was like a kind of close come shot that went out his heading in, and that's just kind of one of the things that happen. He probably could have saved it, he's just misjudged it, but by and large he has been alright. But I don't think Schmeichel has been bad enough yet, given the circumstances and his kind of position in the dressing room hierarchy. I don't think he's been bad enough to be dropped, but he's very much on the way down.
And a few good comments here about the goalkeeping situation. Chris said that Casper was the only one who was going nuts at the officials. We'll give him credit for that, but maybe not much else. For Kev, he definitely did not do his reputation. I think he's talking about Sinisalo here. Whenever he played at Ibrox, he didn't do his reputation any harm, that's for sure. But how many times have we seen him since that? Sinisalo is very much an unknown quantity. I would be really interested to hear what Stevie Woods genuinely thinks about Sinisalo, if he thinks, because obviously he doesn't pick the goalkeeper, but he'll probably know whether a keeper can cut the mustard or not. I would like to know what his thoughts are on them in Sinisalo. And for plunge, Casper is a good guy. Don't like to criticise, but he will probably retire after the World Cup if the Danes don't get there. I will. Not many keepers go past age of 39, 40 anyway, and he's right pushing that barrier. It's not a popularity contest. It's sport. It's ruthless. Well, in that case, let's get Nancy to fuck. Aye. A lot of good comments. James, Martin O'Neill. Martin O'Neill's went back to talk sport. He's went back to that cup of coffee that he left cold just as he got that phone call to Dermot Desmond. He said that if he was asked, he would have stayed. Is that
It's helpful, isn't it?
Whenever I heard that, Jim White must have had an erection at that point, hearing that and the headlines that it causes. But Martin O'Neill, let my thoughts. We'll go into it in a wee bit more, but my thoughts were: see if you know that this guy is going to be your new manager, Wilfred. At that point, if you've already sounded him out and he is your long-term plan, for me, there's no room for sentimentality. I don't care about the Martin O'Neill Cup final. My thoughts were: Martin O'Neill is grinding at results. Performances have not been good. It's not really his concern. His concern is the results. He was churning it out, and he managed to get us back to that position where we're back joint top with Hearts, with a game in hand. Martin O'Neill had fulfilled his mandate. Now, if we were flexible enough to say, fuck it, let's keep him, then fair enough. But we were adamant that Wilfred Nancy is a new manager. Well, apparently, we'd done our research, and I think we'd kind of gone to that stage where we need a long-term solution. It would have been maybe short-sightedness to say, okay, we're doing well right now. Why don't we just see him out to the end of the season? Would that be short-sightedness? Because what if the 8 subsequent games under Martin O'Neill would have been kind of like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, we had a great start to his Man U career. And by the way, Man U I watched last night. They drew 4 each, playing 3-4-3. Another pitiful example of the formation that we are playing right now. But Solskjaer under Man U, he had a great start, and then they said, right, we'll give him a new contract, and then he nosedived. It might not have happened under Martin O'Neill. Maybe Martin O'Neill would have won us the league if we kept him, but I guess whenever you've identified a man who's going to be the guy who fix your problems for the long term, you need to bring him in, and that's what we've done. But does it irk you in some ways whenever Martin O'Neill said that in terms of what could have been?
Yeah, aye, it does a wee bit, because I don't think, look, he's asked a question, he's answered it, but I don't think it's helpful to anybody. I suppose it's helpful to us in the sense that it adds more fire to the more fuel to the fire against the board.
I thought he was doing us a favour. I thought he genuinely said, look, I'm doing this for a couple of games and then I'm gone. Okay, I'll do it for one more game. I thought it was like that. I'm like, don't test his patience. Nah,
see, like I says to you in the group chat, surely when you take, whether it's one game or 25 games into a season, surely when you take on interim charge at any club, surely there must be something that that the longest that could possibly go is to the end of the season. You're not going to start a new season with an interim manager, but you can finish a season with an interim manager. So I know there was folks saying like 73, like he doesn't want it and all that, but that I never really bought into that, because if he didn't want it and he was only coming in for 2 weeks, it wouldn't have been worth his time. He was doing it as a favour to Dermot Desmond, and as I say, surely when you come in as an interim, and look, maybe they've said to him, this hopefully will only be for a couple of months or whatever, but there must be some scenario that Martin O'Neill's thought, at the very most, this goes to the end of the season, and obviously kind of mentally prepare for that. I know there was a lot of people saying that his family maybe didn't want him to take it long term and things, but I just think anytime anybody takes an interim role, there must be some kind of world where you can agree that it's possibly to the end of the season. But with what you're saying with regards the timing of Wilfred Nancy, I agree with you to a point, because I think that I was of the same opinion as you up until pretty much up until O'Neill left, to be honest. But in the sense that with the week that we had coming up, I just thought worst case scenario. Basically, this is the worst case scenario. The manager's just in the door. He's barely put his arse in his seat at Lennoxtown, and we're already, myself included, asking for his seed in a plate and wanting him out the door. And then you're probably looking at O'Neill back to the end of the season. If we would even go down that route, that might be a wee bit embarrassing for the board to do that. But then I go back to it as well, and was it Gordon Stratton that said that the Celtic manager wouldn't be available until December? That was kind of pretty early doors after Rodgers left, and then there was all this stuff about we'll get Wilfred Nancy, but his compensation will drop into December as well, and then there was the issue with his work permit where it delayed it another week and stuff. And I'm like, right, well, at this point now, I'm like, just give Martin O'Neill to the cup final. We're grinding out results. The performances sometimes weren't excellent, but we're grinding out the results. We've closed the gap on Hearts. Give Martin O'Neill the Hearts game. Hearts are, well, I know they've kind of bounced back, but at that point, Hearts were out of form. Let him take the Hearts game. Let him take us to the top of the league. We'll get into the Roma game. Martin O'Neill would have probably lost to Roma. Roma are a better team than us now. And then you go into the cup final. And if he wins the cup final, you're a legend, you're a hero. If he loses the cup final, he's still a legend, he's still a hero, and would have walked out of Hampden saying, right, well, he came in and he's took his back in the league, he lost the cup final, obviously we would have been disappointed at that, but you're somewhat of a positive mindset walking out of Hampden saying, right, well, we've got this guy coming in, he'll maybe come in and mix it up, and hopefully we'll kick on, get through to January, get his players in, and obviously we'll kick on and win the league for there. But the timing of bringing him in when we did, obviously it gets flung in at the deep end against Hearts. It was hopeless for 70 minutes after a promising 20 minutes. Said you go, new manager bounce lasted all 20 minutes. And then you go into Thursday. As I say, there's a manner to lose, and that wasn't it. Roma didn't break sweat, and it's at Parkhead in Europe. It doesn't happen a lot. And then obviously the cup final. It's been like watching a car crash in slow motion, and I feel that that's going to continue the more. But I would have kept O'Neill, and I would have had Nancy coming in yesterday, pretty much.
Can I ask you this? Okay. I wanted to make sure that I was right about this, but see Martin O'Neill's final 3 fixtures. Okay, so take emotion out of it. Just on paper. Okay. Martin O'Neill's final 3 fixtures: away to Feyenoord, away to Hibs, who we've actually got a worse record at Easter Road than what we do in Midlothian. So away to Feyenoord, away to Hibs, and at home to Dundee. Who had the easier fixtures on paper? Comparing that to at home to Hearts, who hadn't won a game in 5 at least. At home to Roma, and Hampden, St Mirren. Who had the easier 3 fixtures on paper?
To be honest, I think I'd still say O'Neill, because the Hearts are top of the league, regardless of how in or out of form they are. They were still top of the league. Roma are a good team, and a cup final is a cup final, like we said. Like St Mirren are 9th or 10th in the league, but it's a one-off game. It's a cup final and all the rest of it. So I would still say that O'Neill had the easier games on paper, so to speak.
Fair enough.
Would you disagree with that? Would you say that Nancy had the...
I would have said, okay, before going into the game at Parkhead against Roma, I would say that Feyenoord away against Roma at home, I thought I would probably have fancied their chances to get a point against Roma at Parkhead rather than get a point away in the Netherlands, just because how crap we are in Europe away from home. Hibs away or Hearts at home, I would definitely take Hearts at home whenever they've been on a winless run of 5. and a cup final. What was the alternative? A cup final against St Mirren, or a home game against Dundee. Well, kind of match it up. Either way. I think it's like 50-50. I'd maybe I've looked at it on paper that the Nancy games could have been easier, but nip and tuck. But then
I
Neil
just
had
felt I just felt that the ideal time, and look, the compensation rumours not that come into it, but I think the obvious time to replace him would have been the international break. See, as soon as it went past the international break, and we weren't kind of appointing him pretty shortly afterwards, and it was the delay, and then O'Neill was definitely leaving, and then it was he's going to stay on for one more game. As soon as that started, that's when I'm like, nah, just leave it, because the games are, well, it's going to continue basically since then. It's Thursday, Sunday, or Wednesday, Saturday, whatever, by their phone, but you're not going to get a break, so you're literally throwing the guy in at the deep end. And as I say, that this is the worst case scenario as it's played out. And I just think there's another planet where even if we lost that game at the weekend, we would have been raging, we would have been annoyed, but we'd be sitting on here no knowing anything. Well, no knowing anything really about the new manager and what's coming, and we would have been somewhat positive, kind of looking to the future. We would have we would have had a good week, and then we would have been on here next week calling for his head. But I just think that kind of made sense. I know we kind of spoke about it in the group chat, and I was always the same opinion yourself, right up until it got to the end and it was a delay, and then I'm like, well, there's only a week to go now, so just let it run. But I do totally understand the logic. This is the guy, it's the number one candidate, and he was only short term, so get him, and I understand that as well.
Yeah. Right, James, you're doing a lot of the legwork for tonight in terms of like talking and me asking the questions, but that's just how things are going right tonight. Another one in terms of what did you say? Sorry.
It's therapy. You're my therapist.
Therapy. Aye, totally agree with you. Right. The other thing about Martin O'Neill is that Jim White had asked him about the exchange they had with Wilfred Nancy. And beforehand, Martin O'Neill had said, I'm not going to give my advice.
2 seconds, Gav. So, Gav, Wilfred Nancy, Martin O'Neill was on TalkSport with talking to Jim White, and they said that he only spoke to Wilfred Nancy for a short 10-15 minute spell. Obviously, coming for the MLS, a totally different culture, a different style of soccer. What did you make of that takeaway that he only spoke to Martin O'Neill for 15 minutes?
I'm laughing.
Seamless, smooth.
Yeah. You're obviously could do a better job than me at this. I don't think Martin O'Neill is one to throw anyone under a bus, especially whenever he can. He's in a lofty position right now, being asked about how he got Celtic into such a great position and how Nancy's doing his best to destroy what he'd achieved. So I don't think Martin O'Neill was at all being derogatory. I think he potentially Martin O'Neill could have been much worse than this. But Martin O'Neill obviously said he only had a 15-minute conversation with him, and he gave him he didn't really go into detail, but I think he did say that Nancy had already had his opinions about the players. Martin O'Neill said that Nancy had already formed his opinion about the players, which I think is incredible. Absolutely incredible. That was the one thing that made me a little bit angry. The fact that he thought that he could make some sort of estimation about the players, and character goes a long way as well. And people who have got fight in them when things are not going well for them. But Nancy possibly had these preconceived opinions about the players, and the fact that it shouldn't be a battle of egos. But if you're kind of passing the baton on to somebody, and you're going to be like the first time in Europe, you know what I mean? You've obviously done your homework. You've obviously watched countless clips of like the players and their performances in the games and stuff like that, and analyze things. But why would you only have 15 minutes with the guy who turned it around? Why would you do that? Even if you don't agree with his tactics, even if you're like, I can get the same results as him, but I can do it in a better style. Whatever. Even if you feel like that, why wouldn't you pick the guy's brains until he was wanting to leave you? Whenever he'd been there for like 3 hours, he says, I need to go home to my wife and kids. Why would you only spend 15 minutes with the guy? And people have been talking about it, that Nancy's been egotistical. Does that imply, does that suggest some sort of egotism? The fact that he never, had a proper in-depth conversation with Martin O'Neill. He said he had like, a good presence, a good character, Martin O'Neill. He spoke highly of him. But why would you only give him 15 minutes? For me, that's fleeting. That's nothing. You can't even scratch the surface of that. Talk to him. Talk to Maloney. Talk to Fotheringham. If you're only doing a 15-minute handover, and that's the only thing that's really made me angry about the whole kind of Nancy saga, apart from obviously the defeats and the manner of the defeats. But 15 minutes with Martin O'Neill, who you could learn so much from. That's really angry for me. What was your takeaway from that?
I agree with everything you've said, but I'd be curious to know what was in that 15-minute conversation. What was it they were talking about? Because like you'd like to think, look, as I say, the manager's going to have his preferred formation and everything else, but surely if he's said to Martin O'Neill, look, we're going to play, or ideally I'd like to play this 3-4-3, that who do you think could fill in at wing back? Who do you think would be the best kind of option for the third centre back? Do I go with the 3 left footers? Do I chuck in Dane Murray? What do you think of him? In terms of the number 10's role, we don't necessarily have an out-and-out number 10, but I'm going to play this box in midfield. Who do you recommend would be the kind of best to play in there? Because the last couple of weeks, like the last week, it started off with Engels playing beside McGregor and Hatate playing ahead, but the last kind of couple of games, Hatate and Engels seems to have flipped, and I know Hatate scored at the weekend, but I don't think it particularly suits either of them. Which there's just been strange kind of decisions all the way through, and like
see if that was the conversation. Sorry for interrupting, but see if that's a conversation. If you're Martin O'Neill, you'll probably think, well, at this moment, my instinct is to say, do you think that that's a good idea right away? Because I don't think you've got the players to do that. At that point, maybe Martin O'Neill just bit his lip and just said whatever he said.
No one to step on toes and stuff, but it was a Tanecki one was interesting for me, because Tanecki didn't really have much of a look in under Martin O'Neill, and then that's him played every game now, I'm sure, under Nancy, and he's playing out of position. So I don't think that Nancy, look, obviously it's all speculation, we don't know what was said, but I don't think he's taken on much, if any, of what Martin O'Neill would have told him, because there's kind of obviously for styles and stuff, there is no comparison between the two. It's helter-skelter football versus sometimes playing poorly but digging out results, and Martin O'Neill was pretty much win at all costs, which I think a lot of us would be, whereas Wilfred Nancy, by his own admission, seems to be more kind of performance focused, and the results will come from there, which again is kind of ideal world stuff. But with what we've got now in terms of options in the squad, we just need to grind out results. We just need to win games, and that's why I'd be hanging on every word that Martin O'Neill told me if I was Wilfred Nancy, because we've seen under Brendan Rodgers it go wrong, and obviously I was going to say Brendan Rodgers gets sacked, but Brendan Rodgers resigns, and then you bring Martin O'Neill in, we build that confidence back up, we get a couple of performances, but more importantly, we're getting the results. So surely you're asking him, what did you change for, like, how it ended under Brendan Rodgers to how it's ending under yourself? What is the tweaks that you've made? Because you've no changed formation, but like getting to know characters and stuff like that. But Aye, it just doesn't look great for outside looking in. But don't get me wrong, I think Martin O'Neill came out and saying that he would have been happy to keep it to the end of the season. I get that he's asked a question, and I appreciate the honesty, but I don't think it helps anybody, to be honest, with him coming out and saying that.
I've had to kind of revise, see if you were to do like like 3 Celtic legends as like a dinner guest, sort of thing. For me, Martin O'Neill is head of the table, Just as a wee kind of fun thing, who would you have as your 3 Celtic legends dinner guests?
Well, Martin O'Neill would be there. I was going to say Henrik Larsson, but I don't know if he's much of a conversation. But I think you would have to have Henrik Larsson there. And then
yeah, he's definitely not much of a conversationalist.
I'll go Chris Sutton then. I'll drop Henrik Larsson. It'll go Chris Sutton, and I'd probably throw in a wee curveball one, and maybe go Tom Rogic.
Right. Okay. So you're going Tom Rogic, Chris Sutton, and Martin O'Neill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't mean to sound kind of pompous here, but just because of we've got so many years of Celtic's history kind of unaccounted for from like a kind of first-hand point of view, I would ask for Willie Maley.
Right, well, I've went for ones that are alive, so that's where I've fell down. Because I'm saying you're not going to get much of a conversation out of Henrik Larsson. You're really not going to get a conversation out of Willie Maley in 2025. So you've just opened up an extra kind of 100 years for where I was going.
Okay. So Willie Maley for me. I don't know how he talks, but obviously he must have. He must have been quite a coherent man in order to like be manager of Celtic for what 40 odd years. So Willie Maley, just to kind of fill in the gaps of Celtic's history and the beginnings. Probably the funniest man that we would have known of Celtic would be Betty Auld. Martin O'Neill, Betty Auld, Willie Maley.
But if I'm going, as I say, I was legit just going for actual possible options, but I think you've got to throw Tommy Burns in there as well. But I'd be hard to disagree with you otherwise. Possibly throw Billy McNeil in as well. But obviously Betty Auld would have the kind of Lisbon lines ticked off. But I'd definitely have Tommy Burns at the table as well.
Red Scotland, I've not seen you in fucking ages. Ultimate Celtic manager. Well, you could obviously turn around and say, well, I've not seen the Jungle Gyms in fucking 2 years. Ultimate Celtic managers, Willie Maley, 40 years in the job and 10 years as a player on top. He is Mr. Celtic. And James, as you said, the man from Carlton, Tommy Burns, of course. Right, okay, so we've discussed Martin O'Neill, talked about the cup final. I guess the other thing, James, is if you had your way, we can do this from, if you were in charge, what would you do? Would you get rid of Nancy right now? But what would you do to salvage the season? And we can compare and contrast that with how we think it's going to play out with the board, because I think everybody here is well versed in cynicism towards the board, and them admitting a mistake and acting on that. They're not going to be fast in terms of coming forward here for that. So what would you do to address the situation at Celtic right now from on the pitch?
Honestly, and I feel pretty bad saying it, but I just don't see it getting any better. I know it's only a week, it's only 3 games, he's barely had them on the training ground, but everything that I read about him prior to his arrival has bore out in what we've seen in the park. And prior to his arrival, when I watched kind of interviews and I had the channel in my head there, but I can't remember the YouTube channel, but it was a sit-down interview with an Irish guy, and every answer that Wilfred Nancy gave, it almost speaks exclusively in inspirational quotes, and that really, really irritates me. But since he's come in, he hasn't.
You don't have in your kitchen live, laugh, love. Or
mate, I always equate it to any other line of work. What was it? Aye, but he's threw it about in every interview I've seen. Life without challenge would be boring. Can you imagine getting into your work and your boss coming up to you and saying that? You're like, who the fuck's this guy? But nah, I can't go all that stuff. Cup final speech and all that. Right, fair enough. There's a time and a place for it at that point, but no, your everyday running the mill impossible is an opinion and all that nonsense. Keep that for fridge magnets. But no, apart from that, his style of play, the boxing midfield with the wing backs, I didn't think it was going to be suited. It doesn't look as if it's suited. It doesn't look as if the players know what they're doing. The amount of times that he's having to bring Callum McGregor to explain what he's meant to be doing, then the Luke McCowan thing, asking where he's playing. So I would get rid of him now. The board need to come out and hold their hands up and say they've got it wrong, get rid of him. And I don't know. I honestly don't think they would appoint O'Neill again, because it would be somewhat embarrassing for them to admit how much they got it wrong. I don't know. I'll be going back to, is it Gordon Stratton? Is he the next number down in the phone book? But I would get rid of him. I just don't see it getting better. And like you say, I know you said it kind of flippantly earlier, but there is also a point to be made as well with Ruben Amorim at Man United. Nobody plays this formation, really. Like, obviously, Man United play it, and I think AC Milan was the other one we come up with that play it. Man United have spent the guts of, they've spent hundreds of millions of pounds. They're still rotten. They're still fairly hopeless. So,
Yeah.
And the thing we were saying as well, how do you scout players for this system? How do you know who's going to be a good wing back? Is it just, are you just basically signing a right back and asking him to play a wee bit further forward? Because, as I say, it's hard to scout because nobody plays it. So, I in an ideal world scenario, I'd get rid of him the new and look to bring. Ideal world scenario would be Marco Rose, as it would have been the last kind of 2 managerial appointments. But failing that, just get somebody in, get O'Neill back to the end of the season, revisit it in the summer, get Paul Tisdale. There needs to be a shake-up at boardroom level. Obviously, we're speaking in ideal world stuff, but in reality, what will happen is we'll limp on until the league's beyond us, and then it'll be the sacrificial lambs to the slaughter and Tisdale and Nancy, and we'll then probably bring in Robbie Keane in the summer or something. That's what I can see playing out, because Dermot Desmond has obviously kind of left this one to, well, pretty much to Paul Tisdale. Obviously, the link was there with Kwame Ampadu and Exeter and stuff, so this is Paul Tisdale's guy. Dermot Desmond isn't pulling a guy out for the Columbus Crew in America to come to Celtic. He's probably never heard of the Columbus Crew. So I think he'll be a lot more hands-on with the next appointment when the time comes, and we'll go back and we'll be looking at like Kieran McKenna and Robbie Keane and these kind of guys. That's what I think will happen. But I don't see it getting any better under Nancy.
So to summarise, if you were in charge...
If I was in charge, it'd be away the Mora.
It would be Marco Rose, but if you can't get him right now, although he's a free agent, is that correct?
Yeah, aye, he's a free agent, but apparently he's wanting a lot of money. I don't know if he's hanging out for a Saudi job or something, but ideal world scenario, I'd get Marco Rose in the Mora.
Right, you flip. For the benefit of the people in the comments, James has been fairly vocal about that Marco Rose. That is your man. However, to salvage the season, you would gladly accept Martin O'Neill to come back with the board to go to him and obviously request his services again. Bring back Maloney. I don't know if Fotheringham's taken up a new position at Swansea or Norwich or something like that. Have you heard about anything about Fotheringham?
No, seen anything.
No, I could be talking rubbish. I thought that I'd heard something about Fotheringham taking up a new position. But yeah, if they can bring back the trio, then I guess that's maybe our best chance at salvaging the season, because the players obviously responded to that. The message was clear. It's one of the most important things, the message. Whenever you're talking about like Nancy, talking about I'm trying harder, I'm seeing positive things in the training sessions, the most important thing is whenever you're bringing in quite a radical change of ideas to a team who've been playing in a certain way for 4 odd years, you need the players to buy on board, and we saw that immediately with Ange Postecoglou. The players knew that they would get dropped if they didn't play the way that he wanted, fast, frenetic attack, and a lot of running. But that plan from Postecoglou was like very, very coherent. With Nancy, there's a clear argument to be made that the players don't understand what they've been asked, that they're taking a long time to kind of adapt to this. And again, in general, the message from Nancy to the players, to the fans in the press conferences, it's a word salad. It really is. So
what's your ideal scenario?
My ideal scenario, bring back Martin O'Neill. If we were to bring in another manager, my ideal scenario is sack him right away. I would be happy, even tomorrow night. I wouldn't care who looks after Celtic tomorrow night. I bring back Maloney and McManus for tomorrow night. Maloney and McManus for tomorrow night, because presumably they're still based in Glasgow. Martin O'Neill, I would have my cap out to him to ask him to come back to the end of the season. For the long-term scenario, though, I don't think Martin O'Neill is the one, which probably... I don't mean to kind of give it mixed messages here, but I think we need to go back to the drawing board for the summer. At the same time, bring back O'Neill, Maloney, McManus, Fotheringham, and try to kind of sign intelligently in January. Just hope to fuck the scouting department haven't smoking weed, and that they've actually got their eye on the ball. Like whoever signed off on the wingers, Tanecki and Balikwisha, a £5 million man who he could barely bribe his way onto a football park right now. It's a really, really shit state of affairs. So, that's the caretakers that I would want back in charge. Try and buy intelligently. Nothing wild unless good targets become available. But just try and be pragmatic about January. We need players in, not an 11 million on Arnie Engel sort of thing. I'm not asking for that. But people who can kind of fit into the model, but they can actually help us with this season at hand.
See, I don't actually think we ever really kind of discussed this. Obviously, we weren't kind of back on at that point, but by the time he came on, it was apparent it was going to be Wilfred Nancy. But see, prior to Wilfred Nancy, again, ideal world scenario, but out of the targets that we were kind of mentioned with, who was your man?
All right, before Nancy, well, so you've got the guy for is it Ipswich or Luton?
Ipswich, Kieran McKenna.
Aye, so you had him. You obviously had Robbie Keane, who was quite an outsider. You had Knutson, but Knutson gets linked everywhere, and I never ever hear concrete allegations, links with Knutson. I don't think that this time around it was encouraging. Back with Postecoglou, it was Eddie Howe, and then we had Postecoglou. We always had him in our back pocket, which was very lucky. I don't think Postecoglou was the risk that people say, because you've talked about the credentials between Postecoglou and Nancy, and you said it was night and day, without kind of implying any puns there. Postecoglou had 30 odd years of a managerial service, national team, several different leagues, success everywhere. That is night and day between him and Nancy, albeit Nancy has done very well in North America. But you've got Nancy and Howe, you've got your first target and your second target. Second time around, Brendan Rodgers, but I wouldn't say Maresca was in our back pocket, that he was just waiting for the go-ahead, but we were linked with Maresca, and people were quite doubtful because he had a bad time with Parma. I think he might have got them relegated, perhaps. That was his first ever stint in managerial football, but he was obviously a coach under Guardiola. So Maresca, who's still in charge of Chelsea, and for all intents and purposes, they're not doing too badly. We were also linked with Iraola, who he was playing, his team scored 4 goals at Old Trafford last night. Right enough, they conceded 4, but Iraola did brilliantly last season under Bournemouth, and they've sold a bunch of players as well. Bournemouth, I think they get rid of the majority of their defence, but they're still doing respectfully well. And Iraola has been linked with other clubs. I think if Thomas Frank get sacked right now for Tottenham, the new Tottenham owners would probably go for Iraola. The past 2 successions, we had far better options. But this time, the difference is it was midway through a season and not everyone is available. Your man, Marco Rose, obviously. I don't know how much that man charges. I don't know. I don't know if he would want to come to Scotland. Our options were pretty shit this time around. And even the boy, Ipswich,
McKenna,
he was going to have to... He had a firmly good financial contract in place. And if he does well, he goes back up to the Premiership. So...
But that's the thing, though. Like, when people were saying about, and it was my thinking at the time, when people were saying we won't pay $5 million for Kieran McKenna for Ipswich, but if we get it wrong, we find ourselves in this position where we're probably going to need to pay out the same to get this guy and his staff out the door. And then obviously, if we're bringing in somebody that's already in a job, we're going to have to pay regardless. So, it's just that, as we say, getting it right first time. Don't get me wrong, I was never a fan of the Kieran McKenna chat. Like you say, even the Knutson and the Nicky Hayne stuff.
Was it Nicky Hayne? Was he Bruges? Yeah.
Bruges, aye. I would have been a wee bit wary of that as well, just because they two are coming for clubs that are run really, really well. And I'm not diminishing any of their achievements or anything, but part of me wonders if it's just a kind of a cog in a really, really well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, obviously with the recruitment and stuff, but I agree with you. The options weren't great.
I'm in danger of digressing about Knutson too much because you say there's the allegation that he's a well-oiled cog in a machine right now, and they've got their recruitment spot on. But you also made the point: why do those players never go on to do better things in other clubs as well? So does that fly in the face of a good recruitment thing? Because is it not the manager who's making them do well? We're talking about Bodo Glimt here.
Fair point. Aye. A lot of them kind of go elsewhere and then end up back at Bodo Glimt. That's a fair point. It's a fair point you make. But he's literally been linked. He was linked with Aberdeen prior to Jimmy Thielen getting in, and he was also linked with Real Madrid prior to Xabi Alonso getting in, and I think he's been linked with every single club in the in-between as well. So whether he was ever a kind of viable option for Celtic is probably pie in the sky.
Did you just mention Xabi Alonso? That does remind me. Xabi Alonso at Leverkusen, he played 3-4-3, is that correct?
I think you might be right. It was Frimpong and Grimaldo, I think, was a wing backs, or not?
It doesn't prove a point, but still the odds are stacked against you anyway. Right, so James, spoken about if you had your way. However, you also kind of said cynically that the board will meander on, watch this space, see how it develops. So I've heard people, you normally hear it on Hun channels and on the Hun Twitter to say, I hope he loses his next game because I want us to sack the manager. I have been thinking about that sentiment, and you never ever want Celtic to fail. However, if you're going to fail, then you would rather... If I know that our Celtic manager is going to be a failure, then you would rather it be short and sweet in order to bring in someone like Martin O'Neill back again and try to salvage the league. But the danger is that he might well win tomorrow. I think. See if he draws tomorrow night. If we drop points tomorrow night, I think it's a 50-50 chance of him getting sacked. That's what I think.
Nah, I think regardless of the result, even at the weekend, I think he's going to be safe.
How many games has he got?
I think they'll let him limp on, as I say, until January, well, February at least. I think they'll give him the window. There's a couple of things. So I'm sure I can speak for everybody when I say I hope that we are all miles off it. I hope we're all rang. I hope we get the more and we win 10-0 and we go into romp the league. But I just don't see that happening. Like we're saying, there hasn't really been a lot of stuff to kind of point to that happening. But I would much rather be proved wrong on this than be proved right. So I hope we get the more and wipe the floor with Dundee United, obviously. But if we don't, and we did drop points, and then we drop points again against Aberdeen, who've come back into form in recent times, so it is going to be a hard game. I still don't think they'd sack him. And you can go back to the COVID season where we let Lennon limp on until it was far, far, far too late before they kind of pulled the trigger. Even go back to Brendan Rodgers, and they didn't sack Brendan Rodgers. But when Dermot Desmond put that statement out, it basically told us that there was a fallout kind of 6 months ago. But we let him limp on. Well, we didn't limp on. We let him carry on for the next 6 months. He limped this season, but we let him carry on for the next 6 months, and then he resigned. We didn't sack him. He resigned. So the kind of historically in the recent past, there's stuff to point to that the board won't admit to this. And Dermot Desmond said this is all Brendan Rodgers' fault. How people can still believe that is beyond me, but each to their own. But in their head, and Dermot Desmond is the Celtic board. The rest of them are just empty suits. They're just middlemen. So until he decides that it's wrong, that's when he'll go. But it doesn't strike me as the kind of guy to admit to a mistake after a week. And that's why, as I said last week, I think he'll let it limp on until the end of the January window, and then we'll look to bring in somebody in February, by which point there's potential that the league could be beyond us. And there's no many other managers in the world that will play 3-4-3. And if we sign players to shoot a 3-4-3 in January, you're then asking a manager to come in and play another different formation with new players that were signed to play in a 3-4-3. But
Can I
that's the
play?
level of forward planning.
Can I play devil's advocate? Okay, it's going to sound like I'm defending Dermot Desmond here, and I can see that the virtual cabbage is coming my way right now. But see, to play devil's advocate, do you think that Dermot Desmond would have made all his money if he never recognised when he made a bad decision?
But Celtic are a plaything to Desmond.
But when was the last time he didn't rectify a problem?
Well, according to by his own admission, it was Brendan Rodgers.
Well, the relationship broke down.
But he still didn't sack him. Like you cannot put the statement that Dermot Desmond put out off the back of a manager resigning. You cannot throw that much shade at a guy that you did not sack. You can't go as far back and throw in the shade. As I say, I think there was stuff.
I'm not defending.
No.
Do you
I
think?
get that. I get that.
Do
But
you think that? Do you think that he'll defend a bad new manager like Nancy? If Nancy is like
I
going to
don't.
just kind of continue on in this vein, do you think he'll allow it to happen for another 2 months?
I do. I do, because I think they'll dig their heels in. That's basically what they'll do. They'll dig their heels in, as they did in the COVID season. They can't be seen to be wrong, and we can't be seen to be proven right. And which is why I say that when the time comes, and again, I hope we're all wrong, but when the time comes, I don't think it will just be Wilfred Nancy that will go. It'll be Wilfred Nancy and Paul Tisdale. And Paul Tisdale, as I said in the summer, Paul Tisdale is a human shield, and we'll bring somebody else in to fill that role. Maybe Gavin Strachan will get a promotion to that role, but somebody will get that role, and it will just be rinse and repeat again and again and again. And we'll keep putting statements out with Michael Nicholson. We'll have AGMs where we'll just speak in broad strokes about getting better. We're going to do this better. We're going to do that better, but we'll never have anything to point to say this is how we're going to be better. And this is where again, just to go off on a tangent, I know
You've not done that tonight. You've not done that tonight.
I've no. Was that
You've won an
4
only
hours or something?
opportunity.
4 hours or something I've been on for. But no, I know McGinty was kind of big on this as well. But the whole chat about the kind of 5-year plan. What is Celtic's 5-year plan? And if the last 6 months since the summer has showed us anything, it's that there is no plan. It's to get from one week to the next. As I said, and I'll keep going back to it, Paul Tisdale was there in the summer. You've brought in, but look, Balikwisha is probably the prime example. We were linked with Balikwisha for a year. We've obviously looked at him for a year because we were linked to him in the summer the year prior. Everything, and we had the conversation on the podcast, everything we read about Balikwisha, you're like, he doesn't really sound suited to Celtic. Everything you watched about Balikwisha, it doesn't look like a Celtic player. It doesn't look like he fits that team.
They look terrible, terrible.
Exactly. We signed him for 5 million. Lo and behold, he looks terrible in a Celtic team. He's a winger. 6 months later, we signed another winger for £5 million as well. But 6 months later, I'm covering the old run. You're bringing in Wilfred Nancy, a guy that doesn't play wingers, so that's £10 million in the bin. But again, anything. See, as soon as Wilfred Nancy sat in that interview and said, "I play a 3-4-3 with no wingers," that should have been him ruled out. That won't work domestically, as we said before. By design, that makes the park as narrow as possible because you're playing a boxing midfield, and I know we're covering old stuff, but that should have been that for me. That should have been him out the running for it. But then, as I say, he comes in similar to Balikwisha. Lo and behold, it doesn't look as if it suits us. So we're then going to limp on, in my opinion, into the new year. By that point, the league will probably be out of sight. We'll get rid of the manager, and then we'll look to bring in somebody else in. There isn't a lot of managers out there that will play 3-4-3, and I don't think at that point Dermot Desmond will be putting a lot of trust in anybody else to pick a manager. So he'll go for, if I was betting now, I'd put my money on Robbie Keane. I think that'd be the shoe in. Robbie Keane will come in. Robbie Keane doesn't play 3-4-3. So again, you're changing the formation. There isn't a plan. There isn't a structure there for any sort of continuity. And I think that's why that when we ask these questions, we get the broad strokes answers, easy for me to say, broad stroke answers, because there isn't a plan. So they need to speak that we're just going to get better at recruitment. We're going to get better at analytics. The stadium's going to get better. There isn't any plan there for it to actually be better. They can't tell us how it's going to get better, but they'll just tell us that it will get better. And
I'll try harder this time.
That's it. Do football better. That's the Celtic philosophy. Well, it is world-class basics. It's now do football better. We'll get that up in the dressing room, but there just isn't any planning. And now, look, we always said it in the past, but there is genuinely stuff that you can point to say, well, what was the reasoning for bringing him in and then going here? Do you know what I mean? But again, it's stuff we'll never get answers to.
See, the kind of the line of thinking that I had when I was trying to kind of play devil's advocate about a positive solution that Dermot Desmond might actually bring. I guess I was thinking back to the time when the attendances were low at Parkhead and Ronald Isla was sacked by Celtic. And at that point, we get put at Rangers in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup. And at that point, Dermot Desmond, I don't know if he was insulted by the Rangers board directors at the game, but obviously something had irked his ego, and he made the decision to bring in Brendan Rodgers, which at that point was a massive, massive thing for Celtic. And that seems like a long time ago. That was almost 10 years ago now, 9 years ago, 2016. Almost seems like a long time ago, and a lot of things have happened since then. And obviously, the relationship between the fans and Dermot Desmond has sobered magnificently since then. So, what I'm just saying is that back then he made a drastic change but for a positive in terms of a managerial appointment. Maybe that option is not there anymore. We can't present a rabbit out of the hat, and I guess the longer term option as well, or the longer term solution would mean him leaving Celtic for positive change. It's not going to happen. But I guess I was just trying to kind of think of maybe something good can happen out of a bad situation. But at the same time, with the relationship souring between the two parties, maybe he will not do that. Maybe it falls on his son, who doesn't have the gravitas to make those type of situations. So maybe well and truly we're fucked. James, did you read that? I sent you a link. There was an article in the Irish Independent a couple of mornings ago. Did you have a read about it? It was about the Desmonds in charge of Celtic and the fact that they should get to fuck. Did you read about it?
I had a wee skim through it on the bus. I thought that was the line with the Ted Lasso, wasn't it? The Celtic board watched Ted Lasso and thought it was a documentary.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty well worded. Yeah. Aye, from Eamon Sweeney. They were saying that Celtic deserve better than Dermot Desmond. Enough is enough. Things cannot go on like they are. Ireland's leading Bismarck lookalike and his minions are dragging the club down the drain. It's hard to imagine things improving on their watch. Well, his reputation is getting attacked, both Scotland and in Ireland. Who knows if things will change? But as we have agreed upon, things have got the potential to get worse. So, James.
Yep.
A couple of miscellaneous things on this day. We've not done that so far since the Jungle Gym's rejuvenation. It's not a juicy one. However, on this day, where are we? The 16th of December, 2000. On loan defender Ramon Vega scores twice on his Hoops debut as Celtic thrash Aberdeen 6-0 at Parkhead. You might have been too young to remember Ramon Vega, but he was on loan from Tottenham. You still hear about him online. I'm sure you have heard him online on Twitter. He's still a big kind of like fan of Tottenham and to an extent Celtic. He made a really, really bad decision not to stay with Celtic. I think we were offering to buy him, and he thought that he could make more money from Watford, who were in the first division in England at that point. But whenever he saw the success that Martin O'Neill went on to and the potential contract that he could have made at Parkhead, I think he might have had a regret. So he kind of still talks about Celtic in the social media spheres, but I think we only had him for maybe 6 months or whatever, but he was a really, really good defender. He wasn't having a great time at Tottenham, and it's one of those ones where it's the perfect opportunity to take someone from England who's not doing well, but he's got the attributes to do very, very well in Scotland. One of those examples that we've seen before and again, and he made the wrong decision. But there you go, Ramon Vega scored 2 goals on his home debut. I don't even know if many strikers have scored 2 goals on a home debut for Celtic, but that was in 2000. Another one, 16th of December, but back in 1950, John McPhail scores a goal after only 6 seconds in a 6-2 victory over East Fife at Celtic Park. So there we are. And getting back to fast forwarding to current events, rumours. One rumour is that Daisen Maeda has verbally said that he is with Celtic until the end of this season. He's not going to be pushing for an exit in January. If that is true, how big of a boost is that for Celtic?
Who knows? Because who knows? We might show up at centre half. We've said Schmeichel needs wrap. Maybe we'll stick Maeda in there. Honestly, who knows? Because who knows where he's going to play?
You're scared, aren't you?
Oh, mate, honestly. But even him as well, I think he's... Don't get me wrong, he was playing the number 10 role. He's never, ever going to be suited to that role. But there was one towards the end of the game. It was probably 60-40 in his favour. And he literally runs away from the ball to avoid the tackle. And as soon as I seen that, I'm like, oh, he's obviously away in January. But I've never seen that interview that you've just read there. So if he said that...
I don't think it's an interview, mate. I don't think it's an interview.
Oh, right.
Not like the interview that he gave when he said he had cleared his locker out of Parkhead. It's just that there's a few rumours going about. I don't want to say that Stephen McGowan reported on it, because whenever you say McGowan said it, then you kind of take that as kosher. But I've heard it from a few sources that Maida said that he's with Celtic until the end. But the kind of downfall of that is that his value goes down as well, because then at that point, by the summer, he'll only have 12 months left.
Aye, that's true as well. That's another great bit of business we've done, the recruitment side of it. But no, Neil in the comments there hits a comment on the head. If he's going to be here at the end of the season, he's going to need to pull his finger out, and he'll be a lot better than he has been, and certainly in the last week anyway. But he's another one, as I say, in that formation, probably the winger most suited to play in the wing back role. Definitely not suited to play in the striker with his back to goal, and absolutely anonymous as playing as a number 10. So if we're going to persist, which we will with this 3-4-3, I wouldn't be against trying him out as the wing back, or one of the wing backs.
I always imagine, so whenever Brentford were rumoured to be in for Dyson, I always imagined that, and I think Brentford play with a back three. I could be wrong. Maybe they did once upon a time, but I always imagined whenever he was rumoured with them that I could see him being on the wing, not as a forward, but just as a kind of a wing back who's he does the graveyard shift.
Aye.
And he's fucking happy to do it because he's earning more money. He's in the big league, and he'll be getting played for Japan probably as a.
Since I've said nobody plays three at the back, I think that's about the 25th team that you've mentioned that plays three at the back. So maybe need to rein that line back in a wee bit then.
I could be wrong. Well, that was Thomas Frank with Brentford, and obviously, I think Javi Alonso. I think Javi Alonso at Leverkusen played three at the back anyway. But anyway, so from Plunge, he wants to stay so it doesn't jeopardise his place at the World Cup. Yeah. Aye. And then a perfect non-injury Worlds, Dyson left wing back and AJ right wing back. I just don't know with the wing back situation if Nancy wants fullbacks to play it or if he wants wingers to play it. I don't know who complements that new position the best. I don't know.
But then, smell the gloves saying there, we'll obviously if everybody's fit, there's no place for Jota in that team. Because I think on the players that we've got currently, most suited to the wing back role would be obviously Alistair Johnson on the right and probably Sriracha on the left. But again, neither of them are particularly kind of known for getting to the byline. But then, as I say, in this system, they don't really get further than kind of 3/4 of the way up the park anyway.
Fair dues. Right. Another rumour that we've got is Inamura is set for a loan exit to a football club in Tokyo, which is fantastic for Inamura to get game time. It's been one of the queerest summer signings ever, but we've had a lot of strange signings over the years. One guy I remember is Kundai Benyu, who I don't think he ever played for Celtic.
He did. He played one game. I don't think he started, but I remember him coming off the bench. And then I think it was less than 12 months later, he was turning out for Wealdstone in non-league in England.
Oh well. For Michael Ross, when is AJ back? James, who would you have rathered to be fit from the start of the season and had a full season without any injuries? AJ or CCV?
Purely based on their backups, I would have to say Alistair Johnson, because I've made my thoughts clear on Tony Ralston for long enough. So I'd have to say Johnson.
Yeah. And for Studs Lanigan, Wilfred isn't a manager and it will never work. The season will be over in January if he isn't sacked ASAP. Well, I tend to agree. Whenever you're kind of, you know that you're on to a losing thing, why persevere? Why persevere with something whenever your gut feeling is that it's not going to turn around? Is it to make it professionally acceptable to sack someone? Like we spoke at the start. Did we talk about it? Ten Hag Ten Hag at Leverkusen. He was sacked after like 2 league games, and that was a team who just won the Bundesliga. They made a high-profile manager, bringing in Ten Hag from Man U. After 2 Bundesliga games, they get rid of him. Albeit there was maybe different circumstances. I think for his first ever Bundesliga game, he never made a speech to the players, like a talk. He never gave them a talk before they went onto the pitch. And there was rumours that he only wanted to sign players from his own agency, which is almost like a kind of conflict of interest. But right away, the director of football just said, look, we're making an early judgment call. We're going to buy him out of his contract. It's not going to happen. I was listening to like Clyde One Super Scoreboard a week ago. I don't know if it was after the Roma game or after the Hearts game. And Gordon Duncan was saying, but you can't sack a manager after X, Y games. And I wanted to say, well, I don't give a fuck what you think because you're a Motherwell supporter. Celtic is my team. And so being professionally acceptable to sack a manager isn't something that we have to wait a grace period before we do so. We don't have to wait for a probationary period to pass before we sack a manager. If you get the gut instinct that someone is not suitable for the role because of worsening consequences in the future, then cut your losses straight away. We've got nobody to appease here. We don't have to play to the gallery. Just do it, because whether we sack him now or sack him in January or sack him in March when the writing's on the wall, you're still going to have to pay that compensation. But we've let go of a caretaker regime who might still be within reaching distance unless we've burnt our bridges already. If we're too proud to do that, not even we, it's not even a we, it's the board, it's Dermot Desmond who makes the decisions. If they're not too proud to admit their mistake, then do it now, because we can salvage the season. We can win the league, and we can buy, maybe intelligently in January, stick to basics. Things can be salvaged. But if you're too proud to admit your mistakes, then we're fucked, and there'll be bigger consequences by that point.
Absolutely, and I think it's pretty telling that I don't even think there's really been MD. I'm obviously logged in the night for the first time, so I'm kind of sussing it out, but I don't really think there's been anybody in the comments kind of putting forward a kind of staunch defence to Postecoglou. I wish it was Postecoglou. A staunch defence of Nancy, and that's kind of been what I've read across the forums and Twitter and things like that. There is a kind of groundswell of folk that they want him away, and they want him away now. And like I say, like, just for the outset, plucking this guy for the MLS, and as I said earlier, the MLS is a better league than the SPL in terms of standard, but there is absolutely no comparison to Celtic within that league. And again, nothing about it felt right, even down to the Tisdale links with his assistant. It just felt strange. It felt like you say, like we pulled a rabbit out the hat with Postecoglou, pulling a guy for relative obscurity in terms of European fit by any way, and he was brilliant. So it feels almost like we've went, let's do that again. There was good managers available. We were linked with guys with pedigree as well, but we've went for this guy who's been a manager for 4 years, and this is what I was saying earlier as well. And it's the natural comparison to make at this point is to Russell Martin. Literally, this season, we've seen a manager come in that's tied to a system that won't stray away from it, regardless of how good, bad, or indifferent the results are. And now you're even getting to the point where he's saying about his family are asking him if he's okay. His mum was asking him about his bags under his eyes and all that stuff. And you're like, the parallels are there. You can see it. It's there for all to see. And only our board can have watched that earlier in the season and go, we fancy that. We'll have a bit of that. If that Russell Martin disaster at Rangers should have taught you anything, don't go for a guy that's tied to a system. See, even if it was 4-3-3 or 4-4-2, I'm not just saying it because it's 3 at the back and I don't think it suits, but I want a manager in there that can be adaptable. I want him to look at the opposition and think, well, if I set up with that, they're just going to basically kick it longer, the tappies, and get in behind. So we'll negate that doing X, Y, and Z, and it just seems to be something that's lost in football now. It seems almost trendy for these kind of managers to have one style and that's it. You just need to be really, really good at that style, regardless of the opposition, regardless of what players are available.
Like Vincent Kompany getting Burnley relegated and not negotiating, but he gets a fucking job at Bayern Munich. What is that all about?
Aye.
What's happened to football?
Don't get me wrong, folks say it about Postecoglou as well. Folk will say that Postecoglou will never change and he's gung-ho, kind of like attacking football. But he wasn't. Like, there was a couple of games at Ibrox, certainly the game that Cameron Carter-Vickers scored. We went to Ibrox and we went 1-0 up and then shut up shop in the second half. We sat back and we defended. So he did change it, as much as he'll never come out and say, I told him to just hang on to the 1-0. But that is what he done, and he done it relatively successfully, obviously, on their days. But as I say, like, this guy, 3-0 down at half time, and exactly.
The definition of madness to continue with Nancy Ball to expect a different outcome. Yes.
Right, that's it in a nutshell.
Can I ask you one other thing before we get to the Dundee United game, which I shudder to ask you about? I wanted to talk to you about a really, really key absence under the new regime of Wilfred Nancy is Sirachi. Sirachi, he gives his all. You know, I think he's. Whenever we talk about South Americans, like, we know that McGinty is a massive fan of South American fullbacks. Laxalt and fucking Bernabe. Sirachi for me has been. I know it's a small sample size. He's not played a lot of games for Celtic, but Sirachi, and don't get me wrong, he's not been brilliant. He has made a few daft mistakes here and there for like silly close passes where he kind of mistimes it, he misjudges, puts us on the back foot. But that's in the minority. Sirachi, I've been really encouraged with. He doesn't have much pace, but he's got a wicked left foot, by the way. He's got a great delivery, and he's very, very streetwise. He knows that he doesn't have much pace, but he's very, very good at nullifying attacks. Like, come hook or by crook, he's just very, very good at doing that. Maybe a kind of South American mentality, and he's not. His temper hasn't flared yet. He's not been given a red card. Sirachi, if I was in the trenches, I would want Sirachi next to me, and the guy's got a wee bit of quality. How big do you think his absence has been keenly felt in this last week, the 3 games that we've seen?
I think it would have definitely been better. As I say, I think he is the most suited to that left wing back role. It goes far to say he's probably the only one that would be comfortable actually playing it. It's just his energy and kind of enthusiasm. Like you say, he's not the quickest in the world, but he's constantly sprinting, which is something that we're kind of missing in that team, is energy. Even Maida kind of recently, I don't think, has been the same as he was in the past, but he's definitely a big miss. He's a player that I'd like to see signed permanently. But as I say, in this system, he's probably one of the ones that it would suit, because he looked good at left back and predominantly looked good going forward for left back. So you'd hope that would translate into this style.
I felt so gutted for him when he limped off in Martin O'Neill's final game. I think it was like the opening 20 odd minutes. He limped off with a hammy, and I'm on the south side, and he had to limp off in the north. He had to walk right around the entire half ground, and he looked dejected. Because I think he knew we've got a cup final coming up. I don't know if he's ever won a trophy, but he probably knew that if he kept performing like the way he was, the jersey was his. He looked dejected, and everybody in the stadium, the sympathy was just radiating for the stands. I feel so sorry for him. He's one of the few players I feel sorry for in the past week or so. Just gutting. And anyway, James, we're half a minute away from the 2 hour mark. You know that I'm a man for milestones. I would never have settled for anything less than 2 hours. Before we went live, I'm like, James, I've got nothing written down. I guess we'll just wing it. But last and final thing, we'll get Dundee United tomorrow night. Now, we actually thought as a podcast we could leave it tonight and we'll do one Thursday or Friday, maybe the weekend, and then we've got the two games to talk about. But it's good we've stopped, we've bookmarked it, we've spoken about the cup final, but now we've got a massive game tomorrow night. Now, I dare say, I think maybe the majority of the people tonight would say that Nancy should be out by now. However, we've got a game tomorrow night, and if he wins, then that kind of changes our fortunes because it kind of, are we in the Russell Martin territory where you lose a few games, you win a game, and then that kind of prolongs the state of execution. And then you're talking about, well, do you want your team to lose to cancel the inevitability to bring it to a close? That's a horrible state of affairs. You never want your team to lose, but if you know that you're on to a bad thing, then maybe it's the kind of thing just to kind of cut the ties right away. But we'll get Dundee United tomorrow night. Dundee United, I don't think are doing too well in the league. Ironically, Goodwin was at the game. Jim Goodwin was at the game. He was on Premier Sports as one of the pundits, and he was talking about how badly Celtic have done. But he said, oh, my daughter's upstairs, if you can hear her crying. Goodwin was talking about the possibility that Celtic could come back to haunt him at Tannadice and take 3 points against him. But Dundee United, where are they in the league? Let me just get to that right now for you. Dundee United are 8th in the league. They've played 16. They've won 3, drawn 8, lost 5. They've scored 21 goals in the league. We've only scored 25 in the league. However, we've conceded 11 and they've conceded 25. They're on a bit of a bad run. They've not won in 5, maybe 6 games. But Dundee United at home, they're going to fancy their chances, especially from set pieces against us. It could be do or die for Nancy, in my opinion, but maybe the board, they'll prolong it anyway. What's your expectations about tomorrow night?
As long as we get a good performance, that's the main thing, in it? The result's secondary, so
Okay.
Nancy Ball CSC. Nah, my expectations are 0, to be honest with you. I think it'll just be maybe the same. I think Jim Goodwin's probably in that same kind of school as like Stephen Robinson and Derek McInnes, the kind of tried and tested managers in Scotland that play kind of typically the way you would imagine like a Scottish team to play against Celtic. So I honestly expect maybe the same.
So for this one, for Hugh, sorry James, but for Hugh Jameson, I've never said this before, but I'd take a heavy defeat if Nancy walked afterwards.
You know, I actually said that. I didn't say that, but when it went 3-1, I says was it 4-1 that got Tony Mowbray sacked, but I was reliably told that it was 4-0 that got Tony Mowbray sacked. So hit the crossbar with that one. But as I said, unless it is an absolute drubbing, the Mora, like 5-6, I just don't see him being sacked. If that happens, obviously I hope I'm wrong, but I just do not see it. I think it's too early for the board. It's not too early for us to obviously have an opinion, but I'm expecting maybe the same again, the Mora, to be honest with you, because there hasn't been anything. There hasn't been any kind of wee shoots of hope. I know we're kind of negative Nancy's at the best at times, but they're really, I mean, folk will cling on for dear life to that first 20 minutes against Hearts. As I say, it took 20 minutes to get us sussed out. Second half against Roma, the game's deed and buried, and it became a bit of a fact-finding mission, judging off his subs. And then, obviously, hopeless again on Sunday. So, I really just expect maybe the same. I think he'll come out and he'll play the 3-4-3. I think there'll be players all over the place. It'll be Kamikaze Fitba. We'll barely string 2 passes together, struggle to mount attacks or maintain attacks, and just leave ourselves mentally short at the back because we'll have a centre half playing as a winger for reasons unknown to anybody.
and as obscure as the tactics of Nancy, so will be that name tag. The Scottish accent is very tough to understand. I'll rewatch with subtitles. I don't think subtitles will get you any further. I don't even know what your name is. Where are you from? What's your country of origin? But you speak very well English, very good English. Zippy Hattrick, very well English. Aye, James. So, predictions for tomorrow night. Scoreline.
I can't
I don't
predict a
even want to
defeat, can I?
ask you what your lineup would be because
Oh,
it's like
fucking hold on,
you
I'll
don't
write the
want the
names out
lineup,
of
are
hat
you?
here. Nah, honestly, I mean, who does Shin Yamada come out of cold storage to play up front? Because I don't.
I think we're going back to McGregor and Hatate and Engels and Nygren in the kind of the square. We're going back to that because Ian Atchell's injured. So Maida's up top, Tuneki, and
Taneki's away. Taneki's at the African Cup of Nations.
wow, it's fucking brilliant. Then that's some good news.
So is it going to be Kobe Donovan at one side and we'll put Yang back in at the other?
Well, maybe Johnny Kenny up front and Maida is the left wing back.
Maybe there's a space there for Sinisalo to come in. We've been saying we've not seen a lot of him. Judge off the subs that we've seen, it's every chance. Genuinely, you'd be a brave man to predict that lineup, Namora. You'd be an even braver man to predict the subs. I don't know. The forward, the striker position, I would almost be inclined to go with Yamada. Just to see, because we've not seen him, really. And Johnny Kenny can't play with his back to goal. None of the strikers can play with their back to goal. I'm not going to predict a defeat, so I'll say I'm not predict a clean sheet either. So I'll say 2-1 Celtic.
And if the Pork Chop Express has been a regular, I'll never wish a defeat in Celtic, whether we change or not, play to win or don't play at all. Yeah, it kind of sounds like my dad talking whenever he says that. Not that you are the older generation, Pork Chop Express. You don't want to see you don't want to see them lose. You never ever do it. It's counterproductive.
I'd rather come back on here in a couple of months and we were all ranging miles off it and we can hold our hands up and say we were ranging miles off it. We haven't watched the team pick up another cup, another league title and a winner's medal, but if you just don't see it at this point in time.
For P. McLaughlin, with 15 defeats in 2025, we're every right to be negative, I think. Aye. Look, James, whenever we last spoke, it was a week ago last Tuesday, the new boss that came in, we'd lost a top of the table clash against Hearts. But between then and now, we've lost 3-0 to Roma. And I was thinking, by the way, if anybody can tell me, that'd be a great trivia question. When was the last time that Celtic were 3-0 down at Parkhead at half-time? I don't know if possibly it might have been PSG. But surely never. I don't know. Yeah, maybe. But it might have been PSG. But that game, and obviously we've lost a cup final. So between now and last week, it's been two massive defeats. But between now and whenever we next speak, whether it be me, Andy for Sweden, and McGinty, of course, we've
to
got
give
two
Andy's
big
full name, of course.
Andreas, we've got Andreas.
Andy for Sweden.
But we've got Dundee United away from home tomorrow night, and then we've got Aberdeen at Parkhead. How bad can bad get before we talk again?
Mate, if I'm being totally honest,
do you think we'll have a new manager in place by then, or do you think Nancy will be gone?
No, as I say that, I don't think even 2 defeats in the next 2 games. I still don't think we'll see him off. As I say, the Bordeaux dig that he was in. If there is 2 defeats in the next 2 games, I would hope and pray that he's away. But I just don't see it regardless of the result. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be 2 hard games. As I say, Aberdeen are come back into form. This is obviously our game in hand to pull Hearts in a wee bit. So you'd like to think there's a wee bit of kind of extra motivation there to reel them back in. But it's really difficult to just based off what we've seen, it's really hard to see where the goals are going to come from and where we're going to stand up at the back and defend well. It's hard, but by the time we next speak, 4 points maybe. I'd like to think we'd beat Aberdeen at home. Maybe once we get that first win under him, he'll get a bit of confidence in himself and we'll go on a run. I think that's just wishful thinking more than anything, but it is a tough run of fixtures, and when you look at them right through until the new year and into January, it's hard to see a lot of points coming in based off what we've seen, but hopefully it will click at some point, but I don't hold out much hope.
Well, maybe if we leave out a wee glass of milk, Martin O'Neill might come back.
A wee cup of cold coffee.
Exactly. Look, guys, for everybody in the comments, I think we're up to 42 right now, which is crazy because we're getting more and more negative. We're going to call it a night. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's the third week that we've done a Jungle Gyms podcast, which is great. We're getting a wee bit of consistency back again. So next week we'll be back, whether it be me and James, whether it be Andy and McGinty, we will be back, but we'll have 2 games to talk. Yeah, 2 games to talk about. We'll have Dundee United and Aberdeen. Massive week again for Celtic. Massive few games. For everybody though, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for your comments. James, thank you for doing the legwork tonight. I'm just asking questions. You've been
Thank you for talking
the coherent responses. No, but it's been great. We'll exit tonight, but thank you again. And thank you for the banter and the comments. Right, good night, God bless. Cheerio.